Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Coffee with Tracey. I am your host, Tracey Osborne. With me today is a dear friend. I've known Laura for several years now. And we are going to talk about how to love who you see in the mirror. And this is a hard topic. So this is going to be an interesting one it's a hard topic for me. And, Laura and I have worked together off and on over the years over my body image issues. So, and it's important because if you don't love who you see in the mirror and you don't believe in yourself, that's going to translate over into your business. So it all has to start with you. Let me read Laura's bio, and then we're going to get going. Body image expert, coach, and acclaimed author Laura Fenamore is on a mission to help women around the world end the constant battle with their bodies and start adoring who they see in the mirror. Her approach walks students and readers through the heartfelt journey to self-love at any size or age by unlocking the secrets to a lifetime of physical and spiritual health. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Tracey. Thank you for your courage right out of the bat. Just to say, hey, this is a real vulnerable issue for me. This is a real issue for me. So,
yeah. Well, I've never been quiet about it. I've always been, because I guess my thoughts are, if I can be honest and open, and my story and my troubles, kind of like you, can help somebody else, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I don't mind laying myself out on the line if it's going to help somebody else. So, speaking of that, you have a really tough story from when you started and then your transformation. So, why don't you take a couple minutes and tell us your story?
I would love to do that, and I'm just so honored and grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So, I will say that the story has a happy ending. So I'm just going to start off with a happy ending.
Yes, it does.
So when I was 24 years old, I was planning my exit. It was a really tough time for me. And most 24-year-olds are thinking about college or right after college or where they're going to work. And I was sort of out of my mind. And the truth is that I was always good at faking things. I faked and isolated myself with food and alcohol and drugs and all that kind of stuff. But people weren't aware of how dark it got for me. But so when I was 24 years old, I was 100 pounds heavier than I am right now. I was drinking alcoholically. I smoked a couple of packs of cigarettes a day. I was a closet smoker. I used drugs, but mostly I was addicted to self-hatred. And there wasn't anything that anyone could say to me that made me feel better about who I was. And even though I knew intellectually that, I know I'm a good person, but I couldn't feel that in any way, shape, or form. In fact, anything that I tried to feel, I covered up with, being high on food or drugs or alcohol. So, taking you back, I am the youngest of 8 children. I come from a large Catholic Italian family from Long Island, New York. And my father had been abused as a child, and the cycle continued when he had children. And he was an unmedicated, unserviced. He dealt with mental illness in a big way. So his only way of coping was with his fists and with his harsh words. So a day in the life of my childhood was trips to the hospital and my father threatening to kill his kids. So it was not a good beginning. And my way of coping was first with food. And then by the time I was 11, I got put into foster care because some kind of major things happened that alerted the state that we had to get out. And I got taken away from my siblings and my mom and, went into foster care. And that sort of exacerbated the already addictive behavior. So that by the time I was 24, I was like, I'm done. I couldn't cope with anything. I was just pretty miserable. Again,
if I remember right, wasn't your food addiction so bad you actually ate food out of the garbage can?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like I was really, yeah, there isn't anything that I feel like I haven't done with food. There isn't anything I've not heard about, you know, between stealing it and making it look like I had, you know, eaten it and eating it out of garbage cans. And, you know, I was a bulimic for many years. And let me tell you something, it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So I'm, you know, I'm not ashamed of any of this stuff at all anymore. I understand there is a deep isolation and shame around everything. In fact, this morning somebody said to me, Laura, I have never told anyone this, and I'm so ashamed to tell you. I said, honey, I don't think there's anything I haven't heard or done. So you don't have to be ashamed about anything with me. So, and you know, it's just part of addiction, part of what takes a hold of people is, you know, some dark behavior. And so what happened is I met somebody, actually, Tracey, since you're in Atlanta, she is somebody that I claim as an angel. She was somebody that I met from Atlanta, and she is the person that was responsible for basically telling me, you've got a disease, you're in deep doo-doo, and you can get help. And I was trying to get help all those years, but I never had anyone that made me feel like there's hope for you and there's help for you until I met this person. And she, you know, got me into 12-step programs, which was the beginning of my recovery. And people say, Laura, how did you go from suicidal to like, I'm getting help? And, you know, for a long time, I was kind of like, do I really admit this? But the truth is I've always had this very strong righteousness that I've broken down. It's not even, but, you know, I just remember I hated my father so much and blamed him for everything that had happened in my life. Like I couldn't see anything outside of blaming him for everything. That I just remember thinking, if I kill myself, he'll really win. And I don't want him to win. And again, I don't see my father's life as winning at all, Tracey, not at this stage of my life. And he's gone now, but he didn't have hardly any pleasant days in his life. He suffered and struggled most of his life, lost his kids, lost everything, actually. Died.
Himself, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it was this wonderful angel that got me on my trail and, you know, to my journey to where I am today at almost 54. And I knew that I could not do this work until I could heal myself. And so lo and behold, my journey started. And the reason why I do what I do today is because I did hate myself fat. And I thought that when I got thin, all my problems would go away. That wasn't the case. It took me years to really own my self-worth and who I was. And, you know, so I know what it's like to hate your body fat and thin and not feel good enough. And honestly, my size today has nothing to do with a drive to be thin as much as I have a drive to take care of myself. And that's a commitment that I've made. And I think that that's good enough for a lot of people. And I know the drive is to be thinner for most women, but we want to heal that so that we can actually make changes that don't come from an unhealthy drive.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I think it does. And I think for a lot of us, probably for the majority of us, it totally starts out that way. We're very scale obsessed. We have a very scale obsessed society. If you go into any program, any weight loss program, any fitness program, whatever it is, the first thing they ask you is, how much do you want to lose and how much do you want to weigh? Well, you know, that scale is a liar. The scale is a complete liar. And and it's taken me a long time to figure that out. And I still have my moments where it's like, what does it say? What does it say? Is it under 200 pounds yet? Because by God, I'm going to get there if it kills me. And I think, so a lot of us start out with, it's what is that number? What is that number? What is that number? But then as we continue that journey and we do finally start to get healthier, get stronger, then I think it kind of changes for a lot of us. Not everybody, but for a lot of us. And all of a sudden that goal is, well, you know, the thinness and the fitness, that's a bonus. But we want to be stronger. We want to be healthy. We want to play with our kids and our grandbabies. We don't want to be exhausted just walking up a flight of stairs. We don't want to ache every time we stand up. So, you know, I think that we start out with this one obsession of, you know, what's that final number? And then, you know, for most of us, I think that path just kind of changes as we evolve and we grow and we do start taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And loving ourselves. That's the biggest thing.
Exactly. But I say that it's living, it takes tools and skills to live in both worlds. Because of the culture that we live in, because we were all trained to be soldiers that believe that our bodies is a reflection of our self-worth, it never goes away. I mean, I've been doing this work for a long time, and I'm telling you, I still have a critical voice inside of me that says, you're not thin enough, you're not pretty enough. All of that is still there, but I can override it with another voice that's a loving voice, that's the truth, and that takes practice. So what you're talking about is music to my ears, which is the health paradigm, that if we could just really celebrate, you know, our health, and we're doing this for health, not for image. I'm doing this for health, not for image. But if I have a habitual pattern of comforting myself with food, you know, I find myself getting weak and dropping back into that pattern, dropping back into that pattern, dropping back into that pattern. So it takes commitment. It takes, you know, a lot of self-acceptance and a lot of self-love to get to, like, I am bigger than that. I am bigger than that habit. I am bigger than that habit. And, you know, humans are complicated, but they're all healable. We're healable. We're not that far gone.
So how are you finally able to let go of all of that and start loving yourself?
Well, it has been a process, but again, my mind and what I wanted to do and what I knew I was here to do were not aligned with how I was living my life. So I knew that after I got, you know, thin and lost the weight, you know, I thought that, you know, roses were going to fall from the sky and all my problems were going to go away. My childhood would be a pat. I was still insecure. I still hated myself. I still didn't feel thin enough. All that stuff was still there. And I was like, oh, great. So then I became a diet pill and laxative addict and was just like doing everything she could to stay thin. And I just knew that, well, that's not being in integrity around body image. So I've done a tremendous amount of growth work, Tracey. I mean, the work that I do and the work that I teach is peeling back those layers of pain that, you know, your average person doesn't really want to look at. It's much easier to eat or drink over it than it is to actually look at it. And so looking at the scars and feeling like, okay, you know, I'm still okay, even with these flaws and scars. And so, you know, since you and I were working together and since you were in my class, I mean, what I really feel is the premise and the foundation of the work that I do is we all talk about self-love, and self-love is super important. But until we actually accept ourselves and actually say, I'm okay, it doesn't matter how much you try to throw self-love at anyone. They can't love themselves until they accept themselves. And so we're constantly looking at ways to find ourselves wrong. It's really hard to just say, I accept that this is who I am. Even if right now I don't like that being that I'm being, I still accept her for who she is. So, you know, I mean, we have all these archetypes that, like, you know, victim and ways of being in the world that we don't like necessarily. but it doesn't mean that we're bad for having that way. You know, we all have wounds. We all have ways that we have survived. And I feel like embracing and accepting that is the only way that I'm going to improve on it and change it. So instead of hating the victim in me, I've like learned to love her, really learned to love her. And I teach people, you got to love all parts of yourself by accepting her first. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And you bring this up. This is such a hard topic for me. This is a very raw topic for me. You bring that up, and I think back to, I was at the gym just this morning, and I was on the Stairmaster, and I looked in the mirror, and I thought, oh my God, what a gross fat cow, right? And here we go.
That's okay.
And I had to get off the Stairmaster and get onto a different piece of equipment while I waited until my training, because I work with a personal trainer. And so I was just getting some cardio, and I had to get onto a different piece of equipment where I could not see the mirrors. Because I couldn't stop looking, going, do I really look like that? Oh my God, here I think I look down and I think I'm getting thinner and I think things are finally starting to happen. And I look in this mirror and I'm like, right? So, you know, that just tells me right there, as you were saying, I'm not at that stage of acceptance. Even though I thought I was getting there, it sounds like I have still a long way to go. And it's hard. It is so freaking hard. So,
well, I'm just going to say that I'm really, like you said in the beginning, it's really great that your vulnerability will help somebody else, that you are not alone, that a lot of people feel that way. And I think that you just like nailed it in terms of, I thought I accept myself, but I don't accept myself because I've got this critical voice that's just like, I'm so disgusted I have to get onto another machine. So that's not accepting. Accepting is, I love you and I accept you in spite of what I see. And I'm working on you in every way. Talking to yourself with just the grace of God, like the grace of God, just like, how would the universe talk to you if you had the most loving partner? Like, I love you no matter what. And I accept you no matter what. And that's real, like you're right, it is hard. It's very challenging for people to, so I joke and I say, well, I'm like a schizophrenic because I'll have that really nasty voice, and I'm not joking about being schizophrenic, but it feels like there's many parts, and there are many parts. But I can talk loving to myself in the mirror and at the same time have that really critical voice, like feeling hopeless and, oh my God, it's never going to change and this is so horrible, and say, honey, I know it feels scary, but you know what? I'm so proud of you. I mean, and of course, my first reaction was like, I'm so proud of you for being at the gym. I mean, and having a trainer and taking care of yourself in that way, that is huge, Tracey. You're in a very small percentage of people that do that.
I love the gym. I love going. I love working. So what I did, I did my workout and I got in the car and I was sitting in the car and I was thinking and I was reflecting back and I was like, okay, well, let's look at some positives. The workouts we've done this week were brutal, absolutely brutal. And 2 weeks ago, there's no way I could have gotten through them. Yesterday he put me through this hard circuit, which was just constantly doing and lifting and running and moving. And he wanted me to get 6 rounds of this circuit done in a half an hour. And by the sixth one, actually after the second one, I had to take my shoes off because my feet were killing me. So I was doing it barefoot because I have flat feet. By the sixth one, I wasn't sure if I was going to die, puke, or pass out, and in which order that was going to happen. And he goes, you've got 6 minutes. Can you squeeze in a 7th one? And by God, I got the 7th one done. And I was so proud of myself yesterday. So I had to sit there today and go, okay, let's look at how strong you're getting.
Yeah.
And the changes are happening. Yes, we have food work to do. And that's always my issue. It's the food. If I can work out 2-3 times a day if I could, if I had the time. I love working out and moving. Mine's always the food. You know, so I had to come up with those loving thoughts, and that's still a hard working process for me. But it's, you know, the fact that I was actually able to sit in the car and instead of saying, God, well, you know, you look like a cow, you look terrible, you suck, let's go get some McDonald's. Instead of doing that, I was able to sit there and say, okay, well, let's look at some positives and let's look at how strong you're getting. And you can run a lot more today than you could a month ago or 6 months ago, or, you know. So yeah, it's, I don't know where I'm going with that, but that's what happened.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to sit with yourself and talk it through and say, look at what you did do. That's huge.
And, you know, a year, 2 years, when you and I worked together, there's no way that would have happened. There's no way.
Yeah. And you're older now, so blow that myth away that you know, you get to a certain age. I was actually on a radio show yesterday and they asked me, like, what's something that you've been amazed by? I'm like, I've had women in their 80s come to me and lose 100 pounds. I had one woman who, you know, had been obese her whole life and lost. So, and I've had women in their 50s, in their 60s lose lots of weight. So below the myth that you get past 50 and you can't do anything.
Are you kidding? One of my idols, her name is Ernestine Shepherd, and if you've never heard of her, go look her up. She's in her mid-80s. She is the world's oldest competitive bodybuilder. I love her. She is so sweet. She is so down to earth and amazing, but she is such an inspiration. And if you don't think that's something, look at Nick. I can never say his last name right, Vachubik or something like that. But he was born with no arms and no legs. And he swims, he surfs, he does things I would have never thought of doing.
So what they tell you is that it's a mental game, that this is all about our mental state. Our mental state is so important because we have been completely clouded by beliefs that are myths. I call them the great myths, the great lies. And as long as those myths and lies are running the show, we're just going to keep on, you know, looking at ourselves and call ourselves a fat pig. It's just not, we can't get beyond that hopelessness that is really the belief that's running the show. So I'm all about excavating all of those core beliefs and getting down and dirty about them because those lies are running the show. So what I wanted to say was, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and if you guys can't figure out how sincere I am I don't just say things to say them, but you are one of the people that I look up to and absolutely positive always think, oh my God, she's so amazing. I don't know how she does what she does. I know you're this amazing entrepreneur. I know that you're a mom. I know you're a grandmother. I know you have a mom like me who you take care of. I know a lot about you and how much you do and how much you do for other people. And I know that you've been on the end of the list a lot and you've tried to bring yourself up to the top of the list. And that is a chronic issue with women. In fact, oh my goodness, I just
did another show about the whole self-care, putting yourself first. So we just did a whole, I think today is, because I do pre-record these, I think today is the whole self-care day. Somebody's trying to tell me something.
Yeah, but you also want to acknowledge yourself for what you do get done, considering that whole long, crazy list of other people. And then you're still going to the gym. And you're working on improving yourself all the time, Tracey. I know you are. It's
been a struggle, and you know that. I have a food addiction. I have a severe sugar addiction, and I was doing really great. I was doing 100 days of exercise, and I was killing it. And I was right around day 50, somewhere around there, and I'm not sure exactly what set me back, but all of a sudden stuff just started coming up and I stopped going to the gym and I stopped working out. And next thing I know, I'm eating packages of cookies and, people are like, where'd the cookies go? Well, I ate them again, and and junk food and processed foods. And I was like back in my old habits. And it took me 2 months to come out of it. This was like February, March. And I'm just now getting back out of that and back onto the fresh foods. I'm back to almost 100% raw right now. I'm working towards it. I'm hoping by the end of, this is April that we're recording, and you'll be watching this in May, but I'm hoping by the end of the month, I will actually be about 99% raw, at least during the summer. And kind of keep going at it. So the thing is I've been battling this for 15 years. I've been battling this for a lot longer than, but I've been overweight, seriously overweight for 15 years. I used to be really tiny, really super tiny, like tiny. I see my skinny jeans and I'm like, God, was I really that small? And it's been a roller coaster ride. But the thing is every time I get down and I fall down, I may be down for a month or two or a couple of weeks or whatever it is, but I always get back up and I always start over. Well, it's not even starting over. I pick up where I left off. I dust myself off and I keep going. And that's the biggest thing, I think, is that, life is going to throw us curveballs no matter what happens. But when we start to love ourselves, we can handle those curveballs. And when we do fall, and we will fall, no matter how perfect we think we are, as the more and more that you do love yourself, the faster I think you can actually bounce back from those falls.
Yeah.
And pick up and get going again.
Yeah. So here's the confusing thing. We are thrown, our life is one big giant metaphor and paradox. The paradox is that we are told to be thin, because every magazine cover, every celebrity that you just about is, and then we're told to eat, 8,000 different recipes. Every magazine has a billion, the most fattening recipes that you can imagine, and you got to lose weight and be thin. They have, this is what the celebrities eat, this is what you should be eating, and so our minds go to comparing ourselves. What am I doing wrong? And I'm doing it wrong, and I'm not doing it right. And this life is about me. Doesn't mean that the world and my world is not super important, but I really have to train myself how to check in about what I need. And what I need is not what everybody else is telling me I need. What I need might be very different from all those confusing messages that are going on out there. So I think very commonsensically, we all know, because we are exposed to enough information, what whole and real food is versus processed food. So knowing that, and knowing the symptoms that we get from eating bad food or unhealthy food, we know the consequences. So given that information, I think it's important to dig from the well about, what sweets, for example, like life is sweet. And if I'm not getting enough sweetness from my work, from my kids, from my marriage, my husband, anything,
right,
that I have trained myself that is my go-to. And it's about retraining. So I said that acceptance is really important. Okay, I accept that I've acted out, but I also see, just from the history behind me, that I've always come back. I have a lot of perseverance, Tracey, and I know you do. You are not somebody that gives up. And so it was really freeing for me to stop identifying as an addict. And I talk about myself as an addict, that I was, and I know that goes against popular belief, but I don't identify as an addict anymore.
That's one of the reasons actually that I steered away from those 12-step programs, because I thought about going to like Overeaters or something, but they're all about, you're an addict. And I'm like, no, I have an addiction, but that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And
well,
I
don't want to trash anything, because I do think that it's life-changing.
They're important. Yeah, they're important.
You were a sugar addict, and my
Oh, yeah, that was my, bad choice of words.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But I'm telling you that you
Habit.
said it because there's a part of you that believes it,
Ooh.
really believes that you are a sugar addict. And so there hasn't been anything to replace that because it's a very strong ingrained belief. Once I fall into the vat, there's no getting out. And that's a belief. And you manifest it because you believe it. And it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, really, it doesn't have to be that way. If somebody is choosing to stay away from things that do not work for them, it's such a different energy. Like at this stage of my life, if I choose to, and I encourage people to, eliminate sugar and gluten and dairy, the very high forms of allergens, that we approach it coming from a health perspective, not for weight loss. And we always did it in the past because people would always, go on cleanses, and they would only go on cleanses for one reason: to lose weight.
To lose weight.
That's it, not to get healthier.
Yep, I want to lose 10 pounds for that wedding I've got coming up, and exactly.
So if we approach it from a health perspective, I really don't want the sugar for my body because, I'm a visual person and I like to think about my organs, just like trying to process this stuff. And it's not easy for them. It is really not easy. And life is toxic enough that we have to put toxic stuff in our bodies. So I just remind myself of that because I was thinking about, it's true that this isn't going to come out for a while, but we are around the Easter holidays. And it's like, I was reading the statistic the other day about how much chocolate Americans consume on Easter holiday. And
It's disgusting.
Well, I don't understand why people don't understand why hospitals aren't filled up. I mean, I just don't, again, I don't want to get, into that whole thing because that's not what we're talking about. But it's just like, there's a connection between sugar addiction and why hospitals are filled up.
Yeah. That, okay, so you pointing that out to me was huge. Thank you for pointing that out because, I do really try to stay away from calling myself an addict because I don't want to identify with that. And the fact that I am still doing it, I think it's out of habit, but, like you're right, there probably is more underlying, I still believe it because I've been saying it for so long. So cool. More work for me. Yay.
Yeah. And I think you know me well enough to know I'm not here to trash or judge anyone or people, and I certainly
no. But I also know you well enough to know that you're going to call me on my stuff, but you're going to do it out of love. I know you well enough to know that. So I want to let's talk about some ways that our listeners who are listening and can totally relate. What can they do today to start taking steps to loving themselves?
Today, they could take a deep dive and look at the people and the places and the things that they're hanging around with. And they could take just a little look, our environment, our physical environment, our familial environment, our friends, our communities are a strong mirror of what we believe and what we see. And I always say that our life is kind of a reflection of our self-worth. So if you are really struggling, then you just have to look at ways that you can improve your self-worth and improve the people and the quality of people in your life. And you're like, people say, well, what happens if I hang around with all negative people? Or what happens if I find that the people that are in my environment are all negative? That's why there's a whole movement around boundaries, around people having strong, healthy boundaries. And guess what? Our bodies are a boundary. And part of the reason why people feel extremely vulnerable is because they're oftentimes engaged with people that don't make them feel good about themselves or safe in the world. So I don't say to people, you know, you have to just get rid of your whole world in order to be okay, but to really take a very, very deep dive and look at people in your environment and what's the impact that they're having on your life. You know, do you have relatives that call you names? Do you have relatives that judge you, criticize you? Do you have family members? Do you have a difficult relationship with your kids? And you know, what does it have to do with body image and weight? It has a lot to do with it, because again, human experience is very complex, and we want to create an environment out there that feels clean and safe and healthy and happy for us, so that we're not walking around really afraid about being and really having to cover ourselves up with fat to protect ourselves from the world. And I say that with so much love. But, you know, I knew when I was young that I was a food addict, and I called myself a food addict. I was like, I'm such a food addict, and I'm fat because I have to protect myself because I don't feel safe in the world. I could actually say that, but I couldn't do anything about it. I mean, I just was like, but I can't stop eating. Yeah, oh no, I would go to therapy when I was 11, 12, 13 years old and say, I know, I mean, you know, I was a very sophisticated kid. I grew up way too young. But I knew that the fat was my protective layer, because I did not feel safe with the outside world at all. I mean, I didn't feel safe about anything, which led me to, you know, crazy drunken sex and bad experiences with people, and, you know, horrible experiences that were all because I couldn't feel safe or good. So something that somebody could do right now is look at their world and say, wow, I think that needs a little improvement. I think I need to, I mean, Tracey, if I had a dime for every woman that's come to me that has told me that they're in miserable marriages or miserable jobs,
Yeah.
I would be, you know, I mean, a lot of times people are not in happy situations, and they're expecting their life and their body image to change when they're in miserable situations.
Well, if I lose the weight, that's going to make me happy, and therefore the rest of my world will fall into place.
That's right. That's right. And that doesn't usually happen. That doesn't usually happen. So, I mean, there are plenty of people that I've worked with that have really happy marriages and are in good situations in their work, but there's usually something that's not, they don't like where they live, or there's something that's not aligned with who they are. So I just think that that's important to look at that. And also, because we're women and we take care of the world, and we're nurses and we're mothers and we're, you know, we are caretakers, we can take responsibility for the rest of the world, but it's really hard to look at how we've made choices in our lives that have had negative consequences. So I talked about the victim archetype, and God knows I could write a book on what a victim I was, and I was like the perfect victim, and I'm, you know, I can still be a victim in my life.
Sure.
But there's a difference between being, you know, victimized and living your life as a victim. I was definitely victimized, but to live my life as a victim does not only not empowering me or empowering other people, but it doesn't really, I don't really take any responsibility for my life. It's like, well, wait a minute, you know, I couldn't help myself when I was a kid, but I've made choices as an adult that have been really out of alignment with what I knew to be true. So I have to take responsibility for that. You know, I mean, people want to blame other people for all of their problems, and it's not always the other person's. It's, you know, it takes two to tango. We all have a part. As an adult, we have a part in what the choices that we've made. So that's another thing that we could do, is start looking at our lives with, you know, more of a magnifying glass and say, you know, I don't want to blame my boss and my ex-husband or my husband for everything anymore. I want to start practicing forgiving myself and forgiving them. So the good antidote for taking responsibility and no longer being a victim is I just want to start forgiving and lighten up, lighten my load, because it's so easy to blame people, so easy, and to blame ourselves. But no one's to blame when we're being aligned. So 2 things, look at your world and start to take responsibility for choices that you've made. And then, who are role models in your life? Who are people that you see that you go, I really want to practice some of the things that they're practicing. What is it about them that really turns me on? Instead of comparing yourself, or I wish I could be that person, what are some qualities about them that I'd like to adopt? And one of the beliefs and myths is that we can't change. After a certain age, we're set in our ways. There's no way we can change. That is a deep embedded belief. It's not true.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Exactly. And we do have a core being, but there are things that I still change about my life all the time, and that I see and witness other people changing. Habits that have been ingrained for years that are like, I could never do that. And then they do it. And they're like, wow, that wasn't so hard. It's like, yeah, because you got past your belief that you could never do it.
That's a really big one right there. That's a really big one. I call it the can-do attitude. And I try to practice this, especially in the gym, because it's like, oh, I can't do that. I can't lift that. I can't do that. And when I say I can do that, I can go farther, I can go harder, I can lift heavier, I can do more. When I do that, I have a can-do attitude. So that's a really huge point right there. You have to adopt that can-do attitude.
It's absolutely true. So I have a thing where I'm constantly looking at mountaintops in my mind, and I'm channeling, the men and women that have gone to the top of Everest. I actually have no desire to do anything like that, but I do. I don't want to go to, but I do have a mountaintop in my mind, and I just see myself going to a top of a mountain, and oh my God. And I have climbed to the top of mountains in my life. So I actually visualize myself when I've been at the top of mountains. I'm like, come on, Laura, you can do this. You can do this. And yes, I mean, that didn't sound as loving as I've suggested. Talk to yourself. But sometimes I am like a little pushy. Just, you could do this, Laura.
But you can be pushy in a very loving way. I mean, it doesn't have to be an all, fluff and unicorn and rainbow tone of voice. Sometimes it has to be, come on, you can do this. I mean, my trainer is very, very, I guess, loving, I guess, if you want to call it. But he pushes me, and he's like, come on, Tracey, I know you can do this. You can do this. And you have to be the same way in your head. I have to be the same way. But it's not my inner bitch coming out. It's just me going, come on, I know you can do this.
That is
you
so
have
funny.
it in you. My inner bitch just wants cupcakes.
I have an angel in my bedroom that she's got her hands on her hips, and she's just like, she looks like the toughest bitch angel. And she's my New York bitch angel. So it's true that I absolutely agree. I mean, I now embrace that I'm a New Yorker who has a bitchy side sometimes, and that's just, I'm a loving person.
And you're Italian too, so us Italians, not only do we have this going on, but yeah.
But what's interesting? I was watching for a moment yesterday, like about one of the women on The View was talking about being Italian, and that I was raised with food. My whole life is food. Food is so important. It's so important. It's so important. I understand that, because trust me.
Pasta, bread, big family dinners. Oh yeah.
I know, but I've gotten beyond that. And anyone can. It doesn't mean that we have to cut the umbilical cord to our heritage, to our family.
No.
It's just different choices. Different choices. So I know that that's what our programming was growing up. But again, we get to choose differently now. And I really, I see people like being afraid of what will people think? And I'm going to violate my family, and food is so important. And
Right.
I'm not saying not to eat. Food is super important.
You kind of need it.
Well, you do need it, but really, it's like one of those guys on Channel 9 talks about, meat should be the condiment, not the entree. And
That's a whole other phone call.
whole other phone call.
Whole
But
other
it's
phone
sort of
call.
like our history with food should be the condiment. I mean, I think food can be important, and it's certainly a sacred act to eat because our bodies do need food. However, we have taken it to a completely different level in this culture. And that's what I mean about, the great paradox is every magazine cover says get thin, and everyone has these juicy recipes. And it's like, which one is it? So we have to make choices based on what we need for us, rather than my family eats this way, so do I. I eat pasta and bread, and that's just the way it is. Maybe I was raised with pasta and bread. My family still eats pasta and bread all the time. I choose to not eat that. But if I want to, I don't restrict it. But the new choices have been so ingrained that it doesn't call me anymore. And
yeah. And your body gets to a point where it doesn't want it. It rejects it. I mean, I know when I get all the toxins and crap out after I've cleansed and done my detox, and I'm doing better, I introduce sugar and stuff back in. Instant headaches, instant heartburn. I feel sluggish. The brain fog is back. I mean, your body just doesn't want it.
Well, the body's talking. That's the body's way of saying, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Not happy.
Oh, my dear, this has been amazing. As always, I knew it would be. I knew this would be an awesome call. I couldn't wait to have you on the show. So thank you so much for coming on. Tell us, I do want you to tell us about your book. I don't normally do this on our calls, but your book is so important, and I've been reading it.
Oh, thank you.
Just like the first few pages of the book, and I was texting Laura going, oh my God, I'm on like page 3, and here's my aha moment,
Yeah, well, I'm really proud of it. So here's my book. It's on Amazon. It's called Skinny, Fat, Perfect, Love Who You See in the Mirror. And it's part memoir and it's tools. It's tons of tools. I mean, we hit on a few here, but the whole book is full of tools and ways for anyone to get started. So it's a cup of coffee to buy the Kindle, version of my book. It's a very, very small investment.
Totally worth it.
Encouraging people to go get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Like I said, I don't normally promote stuff on the show, but this is such an important topic, and I know the people who are listening are people who really need this topic, and they need your book. They need your tools. So I want to make sure that they have them. So definitely you can go on Amazon, and I'll have all the links down below the video. So, all right, Laura, thank you so much for being here. I really, really enjoyed it. I could talk to you for hours, so I have to make sure I'm watching our time.
I know, me too. It's hard to say goodbye.
I know.
You.
Oh, I love you too.
I love you, Tracey, and you really, as far as I'm concerned, you are one of those role models. I'm not kidding you. I really do look up to you. So I want you to just try to take that in.
You and I worked together. What's it been? 5, 6, 7 years ago, I think it was. And I still to this day hear you in my head going, I wish you could see yourself through my eyes. You said that to me back then, and I still hear it. And I have to, it's one of those things, okay, well, how would Laura perceive this? What would Laura do? So you're still up here.
Is that I want people to get hope, because you see that she has made, no matter what, there has been a complete resolution. Like, I am not giving up. I'm not giving up. And to me, that speaks volumes, because it takes time to change habits. Just my last parting thing is just let go of the illusion that anything is fast, easy, and quick. That is just a lie.
Instant gratification is our enemy.
It's just a lie. I mean, we always see you lose 10 pounds in 5 days. It's like, okay, great. But then what?
As soon as you eat, you're going to gain it right back.
Yeah, it's just silly. So
Yeah.
it takes time. It's a gradual journey, and I'm a student for life. I'm still getting help for myself, and I'm not ashamed of that.
All right. Oh, thank you again. And listeners, thank you so much. I really appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you on the next show.